Donna.
Oh, I heard you were so splendid in Omega.
Donna, I'm so passionate about this work, and
Yes,
like you too, I just overflow with that, and you can't really restrain it. It's like
yeah,
it's so much who you are,
that's
and
right.
believing it with every fiber of your being.
That's right. It's true. It's true. I know. I know. I am so excited about, I don't know. I think that more and more and more and more is people, it will come into people's consciousness and their world and their life as they know their life gets better with it.
And the other thing is it just keeps on getting better and better and better. Like Christina and I discovering in our 50s and our 60s and then 70s, and it's just like, whoa, this is really, really, really good.
Yeah, it isn't at all what we were told.
I know,
The 70s would be like, that's
I
right.
know.
I know.
Yeah,
I
it's the
know.
idea of you decline as you age, your physical decline and cognitive
Yeah,
decline and blah,
yeah.
blah, 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 blah.
Blah, blah, blah. That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, I love the world getting a different kind of consciousness, and is so valuable and good and important and necessary. And yeah, absolutely necessary now.
Do you feel a different consciousness in people in your workshop certification program?
I think that,
Conferences?
yes, I do. I believe that people they're coming in with a higher consciousness to begin with, I think. And there's and for years and years and years, everybody who came to classes were I don't know, in their 50s, maybe 50s and 60s, and now we're getting 20-year-olds, and that's very exciting. And every now and then a teenager, but it's just really, really good. It's really
Wow.
good. And what Tanya is teaching, she starts tomorrow morning. She's doing a week-long energy magic for kids.
Wow.
And so, yes, it's really important to start them young.
Yeah, with our grandkids, we do things like that as well. Like we tune into them in our hearts. Like we're going to go see them this coming weekend. One set lives like an hour and a half away. The other lives 5 minutes away. And so we literally tune into our hearts. We connect with them in our hearts. And you can see, I don't know if they can see energy the way you could when you were a kid, but you can literally, like their eyes open wide, they can feel something's
Yes,
going on when
yeah,
you have that consciousness with them.
yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, it really, really shifts things. And it's funny, Donna, because I have this whole list of questions I was going to ask you, and we just began talking spontaneously. But I'm just going to keep on recording and let this be the interview
Yeah,
because
yeah, that's just good. That's right.
that's just life. The other cool thing is that I love seeing the people in our workshops, not just young people, but also more and more medical professionals, psychiatrists and psychologists and
Yes,
exercise
yes,
physiologists and chiropractors and nurses, and it's wonderful to see
absolutely.
people.
Isn't it grand to see the more professionals buying into it and understanding that, of course, isn't of course. And so I know I love it too. I love it too. There were many, many years ago, gosh, in about let's see, when was it? Not early 80s, I got taken to court by doctors, five different, uh, because I was practicing medicine without a license. Yes,
Wow.
but they couldn't find when the trial thing happened. Nobody would come in and testify against me, and it had to be thrown out of the court. And then 10 years later, those same doctors started sponsoring me to teach classes. And that's and that's just how it's happening in the world. The world is really understanding. It's embracing something so important to our psyches, our souls, our spirits, our bodies, health, everything. Longevity, relationships is everything.
At the one conference I spoke at, I was talking about energy healing and how we're respectful. In fact, one of our core values at EF Universe, we have 5 core values, and one of them is we respect everyone in the healing professions. And that includes conventional medicine, allopathic medicine,
Yes.
alternative medicine, herbal medicine. And we just have the highest respect. And we really, in our culture, our organizational culture, we make sure there's no kind of us versus them thinking.
Yes.
Now, there may have been that us versus them thinking when those those 5 doctors sued you.
Yes.
They got over their us versus them thinking, and they were able to integrate that and realize, hey, this is healing as well. And so
Yes.
what I told people in that workshop was, that prescription drug may be your path to healing as well. And you may need that surgery.
Yeah. No, that's it. I mean, that was given to us also to evolve and learn and get curious about how to develop different things. And yes, so that's a part of it all too. Yeah.
And then of course, if you're using all of those things, like for example, my wife and I use superfoods. We have the superfood smoothie every morning, and we have ginkgo and flax and MCT oil, all these different things in there. And we love that as well. So there's the nutrition part, there's the air part, there's the water part, there's the exercise part. And then you add that into having good energy and every other kind of support you need. And wow.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. So what other kinds of things do you do to support yourself, to really keep your energy that high? Because I know when I talk to you, I mean, you're consistently at this really high level of vitality, just physical vitality and attitude and consciousness. What do you do to maintain yourself in that place?
Well, I do the daily energy routine every day for sure. I make sure that my energies are crossing over. I make sure that my energies can really flow. And sometimes it'll be with the food also that I'm eating, but I love to eat what I love to taste. If I love the taste, I tend to believe, oh, is that ever good for me? And I do the things afterwards to help my body metabolize it in case I get, I could have been wrong there just because I love the taste, But then I turn on small intestine meridian and spleen meridian and stomach and large intestine, all of those meridians, so that they adapt and find that they can deal with foods that maybe weren't the highest, because there are times that you just want that. I really love Dairy Queens. And life isn't as good if I don't get to have them. So I just do the things for my energy to make my energy be able to metabolize. And I know that if I love it, I'm going to love it with all my might and not go into it with guilt.
Wow.
I'm going to love it because love trumps everything else,
Wow.
So that's really good. I am not dependent on anybody being in a good mood. How's that? I'm not dependent on them connecting with me as best they can. I mean, people go through things. And from the time I was a little tiny thing, I knew that, I just knew that the heavens are within, and I just knew that. So I wasn't dependent on anything in the world working. And I keep putting out good energy because I like it. It feels so good to feel so happy.
Yeah.
It feels so good.
It feels good. And after a while, that just is you. So initially you're feeling it and then you're being it. And after a while, I love the idea of states to traits. And in many neuroscience studies, they say, just feel it, feel that good, create that high energy enough as a habit. And then you're firing those neural pathways over and over and over again. They become bigger and stronger. And you then turn that state of feeling good into the trait of being happy. It just becomes fundamentally your nature, who you are. So
it's true. It's true. When I was a really little girl, my mother was put in a terminal ward. Now she lived through it, but nobody knew then. She had tuberculosis, and we were told it was all over, and she was in this terminal ward. And I walked down, it was a day when you weren't afraid of anybody kidnapping you or anything. You were just free as a little kid. And I walked down to a revival meeting at a church. They were singing and going on and on and on. I was by myself. I was 4 years old. I just turned 4. And I walked about 2 blocks at night down to the revival. But they were all singing. And this one man was leading this song, and it was, "You can SMILE when you can't say a word. You can SMILE when you cannot be heard. You can SMILE when it's cloudy or fair. You can anytime, anywhere." And it was so wonderful. I felt like that smile went down to my soul. And it was the best feeling I'd ever felt in my life. It was nothing to do with just planting it on my face. It went deep inside, and I knew I was going to be okay, and that I was going to start pumping those smiles to my mother. And I do love the sensation of a smile that goes down deep inside you.
Wow, the smile that goes deep into your soul. What a beautiful idea. Smile that goes deep into your soul. Wow.
Yeah.
And then when you can transmit and share with others as well, because it's deep in your soul, then it's something that you automatically just share and be and express to everyone around you too.
Yes. It's the only thing you want. It's the only thing you want. You want to, and if I see somebody who is blue, oh my gosh, I do come up from my soul to them, and it feels so good to me. It's not like I'm giving from my depths and, and taking from myself. No. It just feels so good to share that energy.
Yeah, I know that sharing in a group is powerful. In meditation studies, there are 3 things that generate the fastest neural plasticity, and one of them is doing it in a group. If you meditate in a group, if you have any kind of energy event in a group, usually the neural bundles will actually fire more and get stronger in a group than doing it singly. And have you ever done any? I know that with even energy medicine practitioners, they tend to be doing work individually. So do most EFT practitioners. Are you doing any group work as well?
Oh, well, every time I'm teaching, we always do a group, because that's something you just automatically notice, how to up level all the energy in the group, just up levels and becomes more loving and more wonderful, and you can send energy. No, I that's what I have missed this last year.
Yes.
That group energy that is so amazing. And and right now we're actually thinking about it a lot, because in the class I just taught 2 weeks ago, it was called the Diamond Inlay. And it's a different kind of energy. I normally teach 9 energy systems, but this one is outside of that. And it's stepping into something that I didn't quite know how to teach, but I trusted it, and I knew I was supposed to, and I felt that urgency. But a diamond inlay is an energy that has all these little, what are they called? Facets and energies that go in every direction, that can hook up with other people's heart energy or soul energy. And it begins to affect consciousness. And as I've really gotten into consciousness lately, the energy of consciousness, and because it's time to save the world now, Dawson. We've got to save the world,
Supersize me. It's time to go big. You want to supersize that? I want to be as big as the world.
That's right. That's it. Yeah, we always had lift the vibration of the planet one person at a time. No. Now it's got to be, 1 million people at a time, or whatever. We've got to. And so I think it's really important to really, and I don't know exactly what we're going to do with that, but I do know that some of the students have said, I want to go on with that and do something with that and see what I can manifest in groups to make that energy go out further and lift the vibration of many people.
can you do that kind of diamond inlay connection in a remote group, like on Zoom rather than in person?
Well, that's what I believe. I believe sitting in front of my TV last night, having my heart broken about the Afghanis, I sat there and began to pulse energy, just pulse loving energy right through the tube, and I really felt it received. That's what I could feel, that energy received, and I think it's really important for us all in whatever way we can do it to do it. And yes, I think you can over Zoom. Absolutely, you can.
I was when I did. David, your husband David, and I were also testifying before Congress twice. And I remember being in Congress, meeting members of Congress, and I was so struck by how smart they were. But I was also struck, Donna, by how, what's the right word for it, imprisoned they were in their own ideology. So the Democrats had to, do the Democratic line. The Republicans had to do the Republican thing. If they're they had to reinforce those credentials to get reelected in their primaries. And so there were all these really smart people who knew exactly how to solve all the problems in front of them, and they couldn't solve any of them because of these ideologies they were trapped in. And it was so interesting to watch that. And I thought, if only we could maybe have a group of people who just surrounded these members of the government with love. And so I've been practicing in my own heart to sending love to members of governments and people that really get to me, like this one that I'll just mention by name. His name is Clay Higgins, and he's the Louisiana Congress member who talked about shooting Black Lives Matter protesters. And that just, I almost can cry when I think about that. And so part of my meditation in the morning is sending love and compassion to Clay Higgins, just sending love and compassion to these people, even if you think they're
exactly. I heard a story recently. Oh, what's his name? George Wallace, was that his name?
Yes.
In the South? Well, his granddaughter was on a news program talking about the last years of his life, where he was filled with love and trying to change some of the damage he had done. And just they said they would get in their car and they would go just stop at houses of poor houses and asked if he could come in and talk and give love. I was like, wow, yeah,
he became an anti-segregationist after being a lifetime segregationist. Amazing story. And so people can change, and just because we are locked into these patterns now doesn't mean we have to be. So I love this idea of going big, and to go big, that means being in hospitals, being in institutions, being in the Veterans Administration, being in the National Health Service in the UK, because if we're in these big systems, suddenly our leverage increases. We can reach those billions.
That's right.
Change the whole healthcare debate.
Yes, that's what we're trying to do right now. Jean Houston.
Oh, I love Jean.
Yeah. Well, we're having these Friday morning meetings together with David and Jean and her co-author, Annalise Smitsman, who is in Mauritius off of Africa. And she's a brilliant woman anyway, the two of them are now also trying to figure out, how do we reach the world? Can't do it in the old forms that we've always done things in. It's got to go beyond that. So this morning was a talk on that again. And it's sort of taking them over right now. And I think a lot of people are starting to get that it's got to be a different way to reach the masses and the people and to uplift it and to go in deep and uplift it.
I think also there are people who are receptive, and I know I've really stopped trying to reach people who aren't. Like I get the question sometimes, well, what about the people who oppose this, don't believe in energy healing? And the answer is let them be, because there are millions of people who are receptive. So you go and find those people, share with them, bring them into community, and then magic starts to happen.
Yes, that's right. Right. Well, I have loved hearing about you in this last weekend, Dawson. Loved hearing about what a spirit, what a soul, and how you reached everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm more interested in these states of consciousness because human beings have had this ability to reach elevated states for a long time. And we have masters, we have saints and sages who we read about, the Rumis and the St. Catherines and
Yeah.
all these great elevated beings. But how do we move to those states? And
That's right.
it used to take 10,000 hours and going to the monastery and becoming a monk,
That's
taking vows.
right. Right. I think there's a quicker method. I really do. And
Thank
I
God.
think, and I think you're doing it, Dawson, too. I think you're doing it. I think you are, and I think we're doing it. I think a lot of people are doing it in their own way, but I do want to go quicker now. I want to go faster because we've never been in this place on planet Earth before, with everybody so in connection with all of the social media and everything. We're too connected. We can do something maybe we couldn't do before. So yes, it has to go through Zoom, it has to go through social media, and to change the consciousness of the fear and rage and all of that.
And we do that by doing it in ourselves, and then we become beacons of that. And this phenomenon has been studied extensively called emotional contagion. You literally, if you get into an elevated state of consciousness, you affect your neighbor, who is about 35% more likely to be happy if you are.
Yeah.
Her neighbor, who's about 15% is more likely to be happy, who affects her neighbor, and he is 6% likely to be more happy. So we really are contagious. Is that consciousness we bring literally can transmit itself. Donna, I don't know how we reach those millions of people, but I know that being the people we are, sharing and reinforcing that consciousness in the psychosphere of the whole planet is really tipping the balance, I think, moving to a mass consciousness change.
Yes, I know that. I don't have all the answers for sure, but I do know, like what you were just saying about that contagion. What one of the energy systems that I teach is about the radiant circuits, and they sit below your stress levels. So if you find how to move the stress out of your body, then this energy that's maybe been laying dormant is not just joy and love. It's also a sense of wonder and awe and gladness and just being struck by the beauty of it all. You could be and enthusiasm and curiosity begin to take you over. I've seen that in my classes. So that's our next step, is pulling that up through stress, because people are in stress. And if they are living in stress, how to move that up through it and make it larger and bigger than the fears and the rages and things like that.
Yes, what you're saying is that when you release that layer of stress, then the natural qualities, like you mentioned, like appreciation, beauty, and awe, and gratitude, all of those things effortlessly move to the forefront of your
effortlessly. They just bubble up. And so that sense of standing and seeing a sunset or something, it comes over you many times a day, without trying to make it happen. I do know that in our work, I like people to do the daily energy routine, which is just a series of energy things that straighten out your own energies. Our energies were always meant to be in concert with planet Earth and the heavens. But as technology and the what is it called, a couple hundred years ago, or whenever it happened, when steam engines and all of those things, and suddenly for the first time we had our atmosphere had unnatural energies in it, unnatural energies. So that's when I believe it must have happened. Suddenly our energies could scramble, or they could run backwards, or go dormant, or not cross over so that our brains would work as well. And so I think that it's critically important that people just do something like the daily energy routine that doesn't take more than 5 or 6 minutes at a time, just to get your own energies in flow with planet Earth and the heavens. And then you do just naturally, you get healthier just by doing that. Nothing more. You just get healthier. And when you get healthier, you're more in tune with, like I'm looking out the window here to my right, and I'm seeing the trees out there. And in these last 10 years, I would say, I have gotten so much more in tune with trees, and the consciousness of trees just reaches out and embraces me. And the more you get in alignment with planet Earth, the more those things happen. More and more I hear people talking about things like that. But I can walk by a tree and I can feel the energy of the tree coming out and getting me and pulling it close. And then without words though, but I know the consciousness of that tree. And it makes life better. It makes life so much better. But that begins to spread more and more. I saw the man on the news who lifted up and got the baby up over the, and then just another camera from another TV station showed his face, and he went, he absolutely was just moved to tears, that little baby was going to go on. And I just thought, I think everybody is ripe for feeling awe and gratitude and gladness. And that's got to be bigger than fear and rage and hate, and domination and power over, but empowerment of ourselves.
I've done a bunch of community calls over the last few years, and we actually have a free community call every month at EFT Universe, and they're just brilliant. We have hundreds of people on the call, and they're just sharing their hearts, sharing where they are. We're tapping away their fears. And it's interesting that people have these fears, and then you get together as a group and just realize, hey, there are people with elevated consciousness, and then you do feel your fear. I mean, you feel that this is all real, these bad things going on in the world, but then as you tap, you release them. And that is so powerful.
It's so powerful. And also, what begins to happen, I don't know, just love and compassion for everybody going through all of this. Instead of, and that's the energy that can really support them, not fear for them, but, compassion and love and belief in them. And I heard last night, I loved listening to the news last night because they had all of these different people who were a part of Vietnam came on and started talking, and how they had followed like the Vietnamese people who came over to the United States, and they all talked about they're some of the best in our country are the Vietnamese. And it could be the same thing for the Afghanis. They could end up being the best because they have gratitude and they lived, and there's this sense of, it's going to be okay, and they want to help others, and so there's just this sense of we're all in this together. We're all one community, one people.
And that wasn't true 500 or 1,000 years ago. We were just warring tribes, and
that's right.
I'm so struck when I go to Scandinavia. Scandinavian countries have among the highest standards of living in the world. They're known for their civil society, their collaboration with each other, and all kinds of really big social advances are found in Denmark, Sweden, Norway.
Yes.
And yet, if you go back, Donna, just 150 years, they were bitter enemies. They were raiding each other's territories. They were committing genocide against each other's villages. I mean, they were just these fierce warriors just killing each other all over the place. And now you go to Denmark, Sweden, Norway. It's like, world's happiest people as well. So
yes. I lived in Fiji way back in the 70s for a while, and the Fijians just a little over 100 years before that, in the 1860s, 1870s, were still what's it called when you eat each other?
Cannibals.
Yeah, cannibals. And now that they were the most loving people, they couldn't do enough for each other. They just loved each other and saw in each other real gods and goddesses. And I always thought they were the geographical counterpart to me, these Fijians. And they just, and you know what got them? This is great. What are they called? The missionaries came, and 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 they came and they taught just the basics of Christianity, just the basics, which is love your neighbor as yourself. You don't have God takes care of the lilies of the field. He'll take care of you. All of those basics with no fear. And then they had to leave for some reason, and they were left with the basics of a religion that they were in love with. And that's still them today. The basics of it is love each other.
I'm going to tell you something that you don't know, and that is that you said something about 15 years ago that I didn't believe, and I wasn't really on board with, that changed the whole way I see things later on. And so David and I have been collaborating on research now for 15 years or so. And we're very focused on the stress circuit of the brain and on PTSD and trauma and how you release trauma, and training people. At EFT University, we train thousands of people every year to do EFT and tapping. We train them in a really effective method called clinical EFT. So we're doing all this work to release trauma. And David and I are very focused on the amygdala and the hippocampus in the brain, these stress structures in the brain. One neuroscientist said that 70% of your brain is directly or indirectly involved anatomically of the anatomy of the brain. 70% is involved in some way in the stress response. And we talk about cortisol and adrenaline, stress hormones. And so Dave and I have been, we've just been mapping this territory for many, many years now. But you said something way back when. You said, we human beings also have a natural capacity for joy. And I didn't believe you at the time, Donna, because I was so focused on work with all these traumatized people. But I began to think about that and look for that. And lo and behold, in my new book, Bliss Brain, I map 4 circuits. And these 4 circuits are now becoming known and studied by neuroscientists as the Enlightenment Network.
Yeah.
And it's a huge part of your brain. And so we have the circuit that controls negative emotion, that literally tamps down your anger, fear, stress, all of those things. It literally dials those things down. And there's a piece of hardware in your brain that actually does that, which you can grow with practice. So there is that part of the brain that can dial down your negative emotion. There's a second part that regulates your self-absorption. If you're self-absorbed, you're usually suffering. And that's called the mid-prefrontal cortex. And these people able to reach that consciousness you're talking about can literally dial down the activity of that mid-prefrontal cortex and all the suffering and all the self-absorption there. Then they switch on the attention network. They pay attention to stuff that's really positive and good and useful, and they use the attention network to focus their attention. And the fourth system they turn on is the compassion network. So suddenly now they have this compassion network going, and those 4 together, we're now calling the Enlightenment Network. And it turns out it's a big part of the brain. It's bigger than, and certainly more important than, in many ways, to our happiness than all those stress parts that David and I were so worried about. So
I love that. That's
great. Having read hundreds of neuroscience studies, you're totally right, Donna.
That's great.
Big chunk of the joy and awe and gratitude and all these other wonderful positive.
My mother, that reminds me of my mother. She was an orphan, and so was her brother and sister. Their mother died. Just the day after her 4th birthday. Her mother died, and then her father. They went to live with the grandmother, and my mother was there, and so was her brother and sister there, and a cousin, when their grandmother was murdered in front of them.
Wow.
And all of this stuff. And then she was never adopted. She went through an orphanage school. She was never adopted. And you saw 2 different things. My aunt was bitter, scared, upset all the time. My mother was joyful, happy, glad. And once her sister said to her, well, how come you're happy? Why? She said, there was nothing to be happy about. She said, I pretended. And then it came true. Yeah, wow. I pretended, and then it came true.
Wow. So you're tuning into the brain and
Yeah,
manifesting those
yeah,
experiences. Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
That's so powerful. Another thing that I was wrong about that you really rocked my world on was in the 19 late 1980s. I was writing for some different magazines, and I was convinced then that energy healing was something that is a special gift from birth, from above, from the universe. That only these very special people like Donna Eden, who can see energy, could do that. And I said, you either have it or you don't. There's no way you can turn something as intangible as the body's energies into a teachable system. And of course, when you came along and brilliant energy medicine proved me completely wrong,
Yeah.
training over 1,000 people, certifying over 1,000 people, practitioners over the last few years, and all those practitioners. And that gave me the idea, EFT was a big chaotic jumble of methods. So I got together with all the experts, we codified it as clinical EFT, and then we got all the best experts and said, how do you teach clinical EFT? Put together a training program. Now we train people all over
Yes.
the world, and they can do it. They can do it.
It's
So
our birthright. It really is our birthright. And I am convinced that we are here today because our ancient ancestors worked with energy. They knew it. This was the most obvious, easiest thing to stay healthy and well. And had to have kept their consciousness clear in order to survive. I mean, they had to. And so it's all in our DNA and and in our bones. And so that's right.
yeah, and then to organize it into a system, and then now you see energies, and of course most people don't see energies. Oh, I wanted to ask you this question for years. At what point did you realize that you could, and that wasn't normal, that everyone else couldn't?
I was 20 years old. I thought the whole world did. I couldn't imagine how people made up their minds about things. I couldn't imagine. Now I came to understand that they all developed their brains up here strong. With me, the strongest thing was feeling and seeing, feeling and seeing. And I am convinced that everybody born can see energy. They can. If you ever pick up a baby, that baby is looking all around your head and everywhere. They're looking at your energy. And if you happen to have parents who keep it alive and keep talking about it, it won't go dormant. And that's what happened with my mother. She didn't have parents to tell her that, that it wasn't true. So she believed in the energy that she saw all of her life. And then she told us, and she would ask us all the time, what color do you see around that person? Or anything like that. It was just kept alive. And we all felt sorry for my dad. Poor daddy can't see energy.
He's colorblind.
and we were in Ashland, Oregon. I still consider it home, though we're not there very much. But for 20 some years, I had a practice. And when somebody pregnant would come to me, and they really hope that their child would be able to have their senses alive and maybe see energy. And I just tell them, keep it alive, keep talking about it. It doesn't matter whether you can see or not, keep talking about it. And so I got to see kids grow up seeing energy.
Wow. So it's a matter of not losing your ability to do that, and the
That's
parents
right.
not suppressing that ability in the kids.
That's right.
You mentioned you really puzzle the people existed at the level of their heads and their minds. And
Yes.
Donnie, we do so try and live at the level of our minds. And mind is definitely a useful thing,
Yes.
But it's also the source of so much suffering. There's a guy, famous psychologist called Robert Keegan, who used to run the adult development program at Harvard University. And he writes about how our ability to think is such a gift. It's also a curse because it never shuts down, and we're always intellectualizing things. And like in EFT workshops, and I say to people, where do you feel in your body? Now I'm going to make a gender generalization here. Usually women can, and some men can, especially younger men. A lot of older men can't. They literally can't feel it in their bodies. And so we're so used to abstracting into our
Yes.
heads. and so not used to living at the level of our bodies and our energy. And if we can do both, great. But you're so right that so many people just live, they're from the head up,
Yes.
living from the heart, living from the body, and it's
Yes.
wonderful to live from the heart and the body.
Yes. And you know what? For me, because I always live the other way,
Yeah.
through either instinct, feeling, or seeing the colors of energy around somebody, where I needed to go, what I needed to do. Now I'm developing my brain. I've gone the other way. I really love it. It's like I was never intellectual, but because I wasn't intellectual, I don't have, what is the word? I don't suspect people. I don't, I believe anything anybody says to me, unless their colors are completely different. And then I worry about them. I wonder why they said something that wasn't true. It's like, I don't have something that analyzes. There's not an analyzer in me, but I can, I guess, analyze colors and energy, but I don't suspect them. I just think that they're trapped. They're trapped by saying something that wasn't true. Poor person.
Well, you have David to do that for you.
Yeah.
I so loved your book, The Energies of Love. And I just, Christine and I, my wife Christine and I, we use that book, we use your energy exercises. So we do tap, and usually we'll use tapping if we have any kind of tension in the conversation. Like, she wants to go on vacation to Lake Tahoe, I want to go on vacation to San Diego, and we'll just tap while we have the conversation, and then we'll usually just work it all out. So tapping and talking is great, but sometimes you need more. And some of the energy exercises in the book, like that sweep you'd have couples do,
Yeah.
just really, really powerful.
Yeah. Well, for me, it had to start with energy, with just the energy and how it felt and how it looked, because I didn't have a brain that said, no, that'll never work, or what are you doing? Or, I didn't have that. And so all the exercises I do I can see the energy and I can feel it. And when you talk about David, he's somebody who, when I first met him, he couldn't feel anything. And then he was in a class of mine, and he was doing a chakra healing on somebody, and he literally said, oh my God, I can feel it. He was trying to lead people, and he was so stunned that he threw himself and everybody off because they didn't know he couldn't feel it, and now he was feeling it. He said, I can really feel it though. I can feel it, he's saying.
And that's the beauty of it. You train people and they do learn. There's one woman who was going through our certification program, and she was a classical violinist, no background in energy healing, no background in tapping, no background in meditation, just was a classical pianist, wanted to change her profession and wanted to learn energy healing. And so she was in our certification program, and she learned all the techniques, but you're just in a class learning this stuff. And then the day arrived when she had to first do it with her first client. And Donna, she posted in our Facebook group, and she was so nervous. She posted on my first actual real client. I'm stepping away, I don't know what to do. And then, so she went into the whole session just completely uncertain of herself. And she posted later that day in the Facebook group, and she said, I just applied the techniques that Dawson taught me, and they worked. They worked.
Yeah.
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 Surprise to her, but you retrain people on this stuff, and they try it out the first time, and they just learn these techniques. They start to get a feel for it, just the way David started to feel that energy, and then you become fluent in the language of energy.
And it is a language,
It's not a foreign language after a while. I mean, the first is you're trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
You do those things, and then you start to become just really natural and flowing. Like in EFT, we have, for example, a setup statement. Even though I have this problem, I deeply and completely accept myself, which is great to have that setup statement and this cognitive part and the self-acceptance, reframing. That's all a beautiful structure, and we teach that structure. But when you're hearing a session with an experienced practitioner, Then when you're seeing an expert, an adept do it, it sounds like a conversation. And that
Yes.
memory is still there and the reframing is still there, but it's really, really natural. Now they've settled into just doing it automatically, and it just sounds like two people chatting while the tapping,
Right.
and yet there's shifts. So we do, as we learn those techniques, like David, just that very first time, his eyes popped open, but then
Yes.
gradually learn the language of
Yes.
energy communication, learn the language of energy healing, and you just get really good at doing this after a while.
And that's what I want for the whole world. I want every single human being to be empowered to heal themselves, whether it's mentally or physically, or in their spirit, in their soul, in their consciousness, whatever, that they can be empowered to do that for themselves and their families and others. I just think that's what's going to save the world. I really do.
Energy is going to save the world. Shifting our energy, shifting our consciousness is going to have an enormous ripple effect all around us.
Yes.
And what's so thrilling is to see people knowing that and doing that nowadays, just
Yes.
huge numbers of them. And what I remind people of is that 100 years ago, people were still dying from dysentery, typhoid, cholera, all of these infectious diseases.
Yes.
And between roughly 1915 and 1925, we nailed all of those diseases. We were able to eradicate almost all of those diseases really, really quickly. And it came with a change in consciousness. And it was just a small number of people changing, and it then spread. And
That's
now
right.
we know that energy healing, we look like, a few thousand people across the world who are trained and certified. And yet we know the ripples are spreading out, shifting human consciousness
Yes.
globally, and producing a radically different outcome for our planet over time. I, I,
Yes.
I joke sometimes, Donna, that I expect when I'm, if I live to have great grandchildren, and my grandchildren are grown up, I expect to see a world, and this is going to sound really beyond belief, where you don't get a security check before you get on an airplane, because no one would dream of hurting anyone in that way.
Yeah.
That anxiety, depression, stress, pain, traumatic stress, all those things are there in the past. And I imagine my great grandchildren coming to me one day, and then I'll be sort of older and wrinklier, and they'll be saying, "Great granddaddy, we have this essay to write for school about history, for history class. It's about this weird thing you used to have back when you were young. It was called PSTD or PTSD. What is that? What is PTSD?"
Yes.
Nobody
Yes.
has it. So we really are in this process of global mind change, global life
I
change,
know.
global energy change, global consciousness change. And we're a community. I can just feel the community. When you and I talk together or share the stage together, or reach people or talk to people, I can feel how we're all part of this one huge energy body. So that body is strong, getting stronger. And I just love your vision that this is going to move the needle, not just for people individually and their individual health, but for our society and for our planet. So I think we'll go ahead and close on that note, because it's like, I
Yeah.
can't imagine a wonderful vision.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. And I believe it. I believe that vision so much. In fact, it just is. And of course, it's got to be that way so that we can all stay on this planet.
We can all stay on this planet and then
Yeah.
see things shift. Donna, I love you. I love your
Oh,
work.
I love you too. I love you too, Dawson.
I love
Thank
everything.
you. Thank you for what you do, Dawson. Thank you so much. I love you.
I love you too. It's such a joy to be playing on the same team.
Yes, playing on the same team. Absolutely. Okay.
Ah, ah,
Blessings.
ah. Received, multiplied, and reciprocated.
Yes. 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 Oh,
Thanks so
you
much.
made me cry. Okay. You are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Mm.
Okay.